opposition.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago, Canadians voted for real change and for a government that would provide them more opportunities for success. And that's just what we believe.
In this first year since we were elected, our government increased taxes for the wealthiest so that we could reduce them for the middle class. We put in place the Canada Child Benefit, which is now helping lift 300,000 children out of poverty.
Strengthening the Canada Pension Plan to provide more secure retirement for all Canadians. Now, more than ever, we're committed to making life better for each and every Canadian family with a long-term vision to grow the middle class and create a strong economy for future generations. Bravo. I know I speak on behalf of the entire Liberal caucus when I say thank you. Thank you to the thousands of volunteers who gave whatever time they could, to our communities for the trust they put in us, and to all Canadians we say it's an honour and a privilege to serve you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, over the last year, the Prime Minister has been getting advice everywhere, from a secretive summit in Davos to a so-called summer camp for billionaires in Sun Valley. Even this week, he was rubbing shoulders with Chinese billionaires. But along the way, he forgot to check in with ordinary working Canadians. He betrayed them by raising taxes on something as basic as piano lessons for their kids. Now, I know billionaires don't need tax credits, but middle-class families use them. Will the Prime Minister bring back tax credits for music lessons and sports for kids?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
A year ago, Mr. Speaker, Canadians decided they'd had enough of an approach that gave tax breaks and benefits to the wealthiest Canadians while ignoring the plight of middle-class Canadians. They voted for real change. And when we put forward our very first proposal to lower taxes on the middle class and raise them on the wealthiest 1%, the Conservatives showed that they continue to be out of touch because they voted against raising taxes on the wealthiest and lowering them for the middle class.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, middle-class families dream of owning a home, and for many others, it's their biggest investment. So it's concerning to learn that the Prime Minister is making changes to Canada's mortgage rules that will make it harder for first-time homebuyers. Experts warn that his changes could drop home prices by 5 to 10%. Now, this is the same Prime Minister who blew through his promise on spending and isn't creating any jobs. After he's failed Canadians on the economy, how can middle-class families trust him with their mortgage and their home?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we're focused on making investments in our communities, in infrastructure, in housing, in bringing in great new jobs to Canada, like the ones we were able to announce when GE invested in Canada, when GM opened up a new research centre in Markham, when Thomson Reuters decided to move its entire head office here. Those are results that happen because of drawing in and making a case for investing in Canada and for showing that we're willing to invest in the middle class, create confidence amongst consumers and optimism for the future.
Honourable Chef de l'Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. This morning, the Bank of Canada reduced its economic forecast once again, and the government, the Minister of Finance clearly has contravened the rules in his meeting with millionaires in Halifax. Will the government decide finally to concentrate on creating jobs for the middle class? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have seen greater increase in the economy now, but under the Conservatives, it was like in the time of R.B. Bennett. We said we were going to help the middle class, and we've done that. We've introduced a Canada Child Benefit that gives a non-taxable benefit to Canadians every week, every month, and 300,000 children will be brought out of poverty. And this is the kind of change that Canadians voted for.
Families across the country are counting on our healthcare system, but they're betrayed by a Prime Minister who promised to increase healthcare funding and has now broken his word. Betrayed by a Prime Minister who promised to cooperate with the provinces on a new accord, but has instead hurled insults that has stalled a new deal. Meanwhile, everyday Canadians are being forgotten on wait lists. Why is this Prime Minister not keeping his word to patients and families across this country who rely on our healthcare system every single day?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the main difference between the approach the previous government had on health care and ours is that we expect that any federal dollars invested in health care actually be spent on health care for Canadians. That's what Canadians expect, and if the members opposite disagree with that condition, well, I think they need to explain that to Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Albertans continue to struggle under the weight of a bad Liberal economy. In communities like Medicine Hat, thousands of people are looking for work, and families are deeply worried about paying their bills and staying in their homes. The Prime Minister's response is to impose a carbon fuel tax, which will hit our province the hardest. Albertans justifiably feel abandoned by this Prime Minister. He's hitting Albertans with a fuel carbon tax at the worst possible time. When will the Prime Minister admit that it's not a lifeline he's throwing Albertans, it's an anchor?
Honourable Prime Minister.
For 10 years, the members opposite pretended to be the defenders of Alberta, but they weren't able to get our resources to market. They weren't able to deliver the growth and the opportunities Albertans need. That's why Albertans voted for a change on the provincial level, and that's why they're looking to a federal government that is going to actually be able to demonstrate that leadership on the environment actually leads to opening up new markets for our resources, that putting more money in the pockets of middle-class families right across the country, including in Alberta, is exactly what communities need, and that bringing in investments and jobs for ordinary Canadians matters.
The Honourable Member for Moose-Dromont.
Last week, the Finance Minister took a break from drafting the next budget to host a private fundraiser in Halifax with wealthy developers, bankers, and mining executives. Each paid $1,500, the maximum allowed, for the privilege of access to the minister. When it comes to getting the ear of the person overseeing billions of dollars in public spending, that's quite a bargain. The Prime Minister knows that this sort of cash for access fundraising is wrong, so the question is, why does the Prime Minister continue to allow it, and when will they repay the money?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government in Canada, the federal level, has the most stringent election financing rules among provinces and jurisdictions in Canada, and Canadians expect us to follow all those rules, and that's exactly what we've done.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Hashtag real change.
The provinces thought that they had a new partner that would listen to them on issues such as health and the environment, but instead they're getting ultimatums and threats. The Minister of Health Ministers yesterday shows that we have reached an impasse when it comes to health care funding. Can the Prime Minister finally meet with the premiers to have good faith discussions on health? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm very eager to meet the provincial premiers to discuss many issues in the coming weeks and months. We will be talking about things of concern to Canadians. Canadians are concerned about health care and the fact that the money that is invested by the federal government don't always go to health care. We want that health care funding to be spent in our health care institutions, and if my colleague doesn't agree with that, he should say so. The Honourable Member. Well, we are starting to see the source of the problem, Mr. Speaker. A year ago, this Prime Minister formally committed to ending the current voting method, which creates false majorities. I have a simple question for him. Is the Prime Minister maintaining his promise that the 2015 election will be the last one using our old, unfair voting system? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the member was very concerned in the spring that we were not going to take into account the opinions and perspectives of everyone here and people across the country when it comes to changing our voting system. Now, what we did was to set up a committee that will come up with recommendations that are well thought out, and we are going to be very carefully looking at the results of this committee. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister said that while he liked the idea of getting rid of our unfair first-past-the-post system, now that he's been able to get elected using that very system, it might not be so bad after all. Canadians have been clear that in 2019, every vote should count. A year ago, the Prime Minister said he agreed with them. Instead of inventing excuses and backing away from his solemn promise to Canadians, will he work with us in good faith to deliver the fair, proportional electoral system the voters deserve?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the spring, the member opposite was tremendously worried that we would use our majority to ram through changes to Canada's electoral system. And we worked with them to demonstrate the hard work that a committee could do of hearing all perspectives and giving a report on our electoral system. Now he's changed his mind and he wants us to use our majority to ram through electoral change. Mr. Speaker, saying one thing and then its opposite was exactly what landed that member in that seat in this House.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Order, please. Mr. Speaker, this government's relations. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health has met with the provinces. The minister said that the provinces were using the money wrongly and will not increase the transfers. Now, what did the minister say? Will she apologize? Mr. Speaker, Canadians are proud of our health care system, which is publicly funded, but we know that the healthcare system needs improvements. Yesterday, I met with my provincial counterparts and said that we are going to invest in health, but in order to achieve the right results, we need to make sure that the money goes to what Canadians are expecting it to go to. The Honourable Member. Well, when I hear that answer, I was talking, in fact, about other things. She is a doctor. She could have stayed practicing medicine. She has different responsibilities now as a member of Parliament, as a minister. Now, she said that the provinces are not properly using the funding. So tell us what that means. The Honourable Member should speak through the Speaker. The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, yes, I am a physician. I have practiced medicine for over 30 years in Canada. But even though we're proud of our health system, Canadians know that improvements are needed, and this is what we are working toward. This is what I'm working with my provincial counterparts on. This is why, if we invest in health, the money that we put toward that purpose needs to be used for that purpose. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Well, Mr. Speaker, the last thing we need is for the federal government to interfere in provincial jurisdiction when they don't even manage their own fiscal house properly. Mr. Speaker, when I saw in the media that the the deficit is even higher than what was expected. The government said it might have a small deficit. Now it's huge. Now this money is being borrowed on the backs of our children and grandparents. So it has to be reimbursed. How? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the last decade had a very low growth rate, and this is why we've decided to invest in the future, invest in infrastructure, make investments that will improve our economic growth for the future, for our children and grandchildren. This is how we need to improve the economy. The Honourable Member. The Minister and the Prime Minister keep telling us that investing will help the economy, and this is supposed to justify these huge deficits. But this morning, we've had a new report by the Bank of Canada that shows that our growth is, in fact, going down. Now, there have been many consultations since the beginning of the year launched by this government. Can the Minister of Finance tell us how he's going to pay down this deficit in the future? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, as I said, growth is very important for our economy, but after 1 year, what we can say is that we have done a great deal for the middle class in Canada. We have changed their future and helped their children. 9 million Canadians are in a better financial situation now. 300,000 children are being helped, and we are making changes to our Canada pension plan that will help people in the future as well, and this will help our economic growth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of their children, the Liberals have done nothing but hurt hard-working Canadians since taking office. Their spending is out of control, they've raised taxes on everything, and they've made it harder for Canadians to save. Now they're changing the mortgage rules, which will make it harder for first-time home buyers to get their first home. How can average Canadians believe that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, who have inherited millions, understand the challenges that young Canadians face buying their first home?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we take our responsibilities to Canadians and Canadian families very seriously. And we know that the housing market is something that Canadians have a rightful interest in. We know that the investment in housing is, in most cases, the most significant investment for a Canadian family. And that's why we want to ensure that the market is stable over the long term. The measures we've taken will ensure that Canadians now and in the future can be assured that their investment is safe and secure, because we've taken the responsible actions to help the market be secure for the long term.
Well, member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, my friends Tony and Noel from my riding have saved for 6 years toward their dream of owning their very first home. The Finance Minister just recently released changes with regards to mortgage rules, and now these same friends no longer qualify for the same amount that they once did. This Prime Minister claimed that he would help the middle class out, but instead, over the last year, 1.4 million Canadians are without a job. Small businesses are struggling and failing, and now young Canadians have to wait even longer in order to be able to buy their first home. How can young Canadians trust this Prime Minister when his policies make it even more difficult for them to succeed?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take us back to a year ago when the party opposite was saying that we would balance the budget at all costs.
Order. We don't want order. Order. We don't want to make question period longer, I'm sure, and we're going to have to add a few seconds to the minister's answer. So I'd ask members to listen and not interrupt, and to save their applause until the conclusion of the answer. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Canadians, a year ago, made a decision about their future, and they made the right decision. They made a decision to have a government that would make investments to ensure that our economy could grow in the future. They made a decision to get a government in place that would take the responsible decisions around their most important investment, their house. So now where we are, a year later, is middle-class Canadians have more money in their pocket. Middle-class Canadians can know that their housing is more secure for the long term. We are investing in the future, doing the right things for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi James Nunavik EU. Mr. Speaker, for the Prime Minister, no relationship is more important than with Indigenous people. Now, he even named himself Minister of Youth. Instead of eliminating racial discrimination against children of First Nations, he continues to fight them in court. With a deficit of over $30 billion, he wasn't able to find $130 million to help children. Is that really what the Prime Minister's most important relationship looks like? The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Affairs. Mr. Speaker, Canada is determined to improve health and educational services for First Nations children. We know that the system has flaws, as shown by the representative of Children's Services in British Columbia. We need to change the system by helping children directly, and this will be the case in every new agreement.
The first promise this Prime Minister made was to Indigenous Canadians, and those were the first promises he broke, with his Justice Minister supporting the Site C Dam and then using lawyers to fight residential school survivors in court. The Health Minister denying medical treatments to First Nation children and using lawyers to fight their families. And the Prime Minister defined 2 Human Rights Tribunal orders for trying to pretend that Stephen Harper's child welfare plan was his own, and then shortchanging students $800 million. Doesn't the Prime Minister realize that breaking promises to First Nation children is the oldest con in Confederation? Happy anniversary.
Hear, hear! Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our government is deeply committed to renewing the relationship with Indigenous people and are delivering on our promises to implement the TRC's call to action. We have launched the National Inquiry in Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, have launched a total overhaul of the child welfare system and made a historic $8.4 billion in First Nations education and infrastructure, and announced our unqualified support for the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. This is just a beginning. We are committed to making meaningful progress on reconciliation.
Member for Portage Lisgar.
Well, Mr. Speaker, who you know in the PMO is alive and well in this Liberal government. We learned today that Liberal insiders sold tickets $1,500 per person for access to the Minister of Finance when he was in Halifax. Can the Minister of Finance tell this House exactly what topics were discussed at this $1,500 per person Liberal fundraiser?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, like all members in this House, I'm engaged in fundraising activities in support of my party. The October 13th event in question was organized by the Liberal Party of Canada, and we followed all of the applicable rules. Mr. Speaker, I will remind the House that those rules were put in place by the party that preceded us.
Honourable Member for Portage Lisgar. Order.
Mr. Speaker, that's not an answer on what was discussed. We're still going to look for that answer, Mr. Speaker. What we do notice is these Liberals look a lot like the old Liberals, and Canadians are tired of that. Whether it's the Justice Minister selling special access to Bay Street lawyers, or this millionaire finance minister selling access in Halifax, it's just plain wrong. When will the Liberals stop abusing the public trust and provide the ethical standard that they promise?
You're here. Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the member knows very well that events like these are part of every party's fundraising and engagement work. Federal politics is subject to some of the strictest political financing legislation and regulations in the country, and our party always complies with the Elections Act in all cases. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dear Lacombe.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Here we go again. First it was the Justice Minister, now it's the Finance Minister caught in a pay-to-pay fundraiser. Last week the Finance Minister was charging $1,500 a person for millionaires and Liberal insiders to lobby him prior to his next big spending budget. So the Prime Minister has demanded that his ministers not give preferential access to those who made financial contributions to the Liberal Party. However, the Finance Minister has clearly violated the Prime Minister's own ethical rules. So when will this millionaire Finance Minister stand up and do the right thing and repay the money?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that we have taken on a consultation process for our budget that allows us to listen to all Canadians. Last year, we heard
Order, order. Order. We don't want to shorten question period, I don't think either, do we? All right. So most members in all parties are able to sit and listen to things, whether they like them or not, without responding or reacting. It's very mature. Let's see everyone else do that too. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, we have been embarking on the most extensive consultation processes around budget that have ever been done. Last year, we spoke to 250,000 Canadians, received 5,200 submissions. This year, we've already touched 140,000 Canadians. We have the most open process ever put in place, and we will continue to listen to Canadians as we craft the next budget on their behalf.
For Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, it gets worse, Mr. Speaker. The event was hosted at the waterfront mansion of Mr. Fred George, a land developer who just received a federal appointment to the Halifax Port Authority from his friend, the President of the Treasury Board. There couldn't be a bigger quagmire of conflicts of interest. The Liberals appoint a land developer who's conveniently a bagman for their party, who oversees the port's development. This bagman then hosts a fundraiser for the Finance Minister, who controls the purse strings and possible investments of this same port. So, in what universe would the Finance Minister ever claim that this was either ethical or acceptable?
The Honourable Minister, order. I don't know if somebody wants to lose a question today. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, let me quote, I'm the person responsible for appointing Mr. Jim Spatz to the Halifax Port Authority. And let me tell you what David Henderson, chair of the Halifax Port Authority Board of Governors, said about him. Jim Spatz is a tremendous addition to the Halifax Port Authority Board of Directors. He is a community leader with experience in business, arts, culture, education, and charitable causes. The maritime community and the larger business community are fortunate to have such an individual taking on this role. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party presented themselves as workers' allies. But over the course of the first year of their mandate, they opposed increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour and rejected the anti-scab bill put forth by the NDP. By opposing my bill, the Prime Minister refused to guarantee and respect workers' rights to collective bargaining. Yet it was a simple change to the Labour Code, one that would make a real difference for workers. Where is the fair and balanced approach for unions that we were promised?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me an opportunity to point out that we expect that Bill C-4, which reinstates fairness and balance for labour across this country, will be passed from this House today on the one-year anniversary of a progressive new government for Canada.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and the Liberals promised to be on the side of Canadian workers, yet in their first year, not only have the Liberals voted against the anti-scab legislation, denying workers' rights to collective bargaining, they have shelved pay equity until 2018. To quote PSAC, you said you'd be different. But they're not the only ones unimpressed with this government's record. It's been a year, as we know, since the election. The time for action is now. When will this government deliver on the change they promised Canadian workers?
Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an excellent question, and equal pay for work of equal value is a human right, and we're so proud to bring forward pay equity after a decade of inaction. Pay equity between men and women and fair treatment of all workers in the workplace, regardless of gender, is critical for creating growth and a thriving middle class. We're going to make substantive reform and implement proactive pay equity in the federal jurisdiction, which includes 874,000 employees and 10,800 employers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada's agricultural policy framework affects our farmers, ranchers and growers across my province of Ontario and indeed right across the country. This framework provides the programs which helps our farmers manage risks, provide the tools they need to become more innovative, competitive and sustainable. Can the Minister of Agriculture update this House on where our government is in terms of developing Canada's next agricultural policy framework, how this framework will help some of our original small business owners, Canada's farmers?
Well, Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my honourable colleague from Guelph for his question. Our government is working with the provinces and territories on developing the next agricultural policy framework. In July, my counterparts and I, we agreed on a joint statement for the future agriculture in Canada. I will continue to consult the sector in every part of the country, and together we will develop a framework that will create a more prosperous Canadian agriculture and certainly help the middle class. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, it's astonishing that the Liberals would consider changing a fundamental piece of our democracy without a referendum. Hear, hear. It's crystal clear Canadians want a say before Liberals impose any changes to the voting process. I've heard from literally thousands of constituents in my riding, and more than 94% of them want a referendum. The clearest, most inclusive form of consultation is a national referendum. Sure. Will the Liberals listen to hardworking Canadians in my riding, Canadians across the country, and give them the referendum that they want, yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
It is a great privilege to rise in this House representing the people of Peterborough-Kawartha as Minister for Democratic Institutions. Happy one-year anniversary to you, Mr. Speaker, and all my colleagues in this place. To address the member's question, we have a committee that's been working hard, travelling the country, hearing from a diverse range of perspectives. Many thanks to all MPs who've gone out of their way to host town halls so that their constituents' perspectives could be included in the conversation. My parliamentary secretary and I have been hearing from Canadians as well. I look forward to the committee's report on December 1st and making a thoughtful decision then.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Clérable. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In my riding, we consulted some 700 people. They responded to our survey. 85% of respondents are demanding a referendum. One respondent wrote this, and it's worth listening to. It is ridiculous to think that changing the way our MPs are elected without holding a referendum is democratic. Mr. Speaker, what does the minister have to say to that citizen who wants to be consulted via a referendum on the way that he chooses his representative in this parliament?
Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Thank my honourable colleague for allowing his constituents to be part of a survey. More importantly, I thank the majority of members in this House who brought their constituents together to hear from one another the diverse range of perspectives that are required to make a thoughtful decision about electoral reform. We have empowered a special all-party committee to study the subject, to hear from Canadians, and to come back to us on recommendations to alternates to first-past-the-post, as well as the decision of how do we engage, how do we determine whether or not reforms have the broad support of Canadians. I look forward to reviewing that report.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the battle for Mosul is underway, but we have no idea what our Canadian troops are doing. Military commanders have confirmed that the mission has gotten much more dangerous, but we're muzzled from saying anything because of the Liberals' cone of silence. Now, the Minister of Transport once stated, it's important for us to get as much information on what possibly can happen and how this mission can evolve in Iraq. Now, does the Defence Minister find it hypocritical that the Liberals used to demand transparency on the fight against ISIS, but now are hiding behind a curtain of secrecy?
The Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I agree that there is a very important operation underway for the final defeat of ISIL in Mosul. We've been part of the planning. We've been part of the workup for this. Now, when an operation is going on, I can say absolute certainty operational security for the force protection of not only our troops, our coalition partners, and the people that we're trying to assist is the foremost. When we have the appropriate time, we will be able to share that information, and I have provided updates to the member opposite in my office as well. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, this week the offensive to take Mosul back from ISIL started. We would have liked to have seen our CF-18 support the Peshmergas who are spearheading the offensive. Some 200 Canadian soldiers are on the ground, on the front line. In order to know what they're doing as part of this operation, we would have to turn to the U.S. or elsewhere where the government is more transparent. When will the government stop hiding the truth from Canadians and inform them on what our soldiers are doing?
National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, what I also can say is something that's also known in Mosul. There's a civilian population there. The plan that we took in consultation with the coalition partners looked into training the right number of Iraqi security forces, and that's exactly what we've done, and that's exactly what's needed right now. The support that our troops are providing, the plan that we have in place, the intelligence that we've provided is having substantial impact for the coalition for the final defeat of ISIL, and I'm very proud of the work that our men and women in the Canadian Armed Forces are actually doing in Iraq. Thank you.
Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, it's been a full year since Canadians voted out the Conservative government, a laggard on action on climate change. Canadians had high hopes for a new government, yet the Liberals are embracing what they once called Stephen Harper's woefully inadequate reduction targets. Canadians are just as troubled that this government has broken its promise for a new, fair environmental assessment process. How many more projects are going to be approved before Canadians are finally given a voice on the projects that impact them?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very honoured to be standing here today representing the residents of Ottawa Centre a year after I was elected. We believe that understand the environment and the economy go together. We have worked extraordinarily hard this year to deliver on that promise. We have helped to negotiate an ambitious Paris Agreement. We brought in the greenest budget in Canada's history. We are reforming our environmental assessment process. We entered into the historic clean tech climate change agreement with Mexico and the United States. We ratified the Paris Agreement. We put a price on pollution, and we're going to keep on doing this because #real change.
The Honourable Member for Stina, Bulkley Valley.
Only a hashtag did the trick, Mr. Speaker. Last Thursday, a tanker barge spilled more than 200,000 litres of toxic diesel into the critical fishing areas off of BC's Central Coast. First Nations leaders told me that this government's response has taken far too long and done far too little to stop the devastation. In just 1 year, we've seen Haida Gwaii, English Bay, and now Bella Bella. Crossing your fingers and praying does not protect our environment. The Prime Minister promised to protect our beautiful BC coast with a permanent oil tanker ban. When is he actually going to finally bring that promise to reality?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to improving marine protection and taking measures with respect to marine safety, and we have been very clear on the fact that we are coming forward shortly with a coastal strategy that will improve marine safety off our coast. We're very concerned, obviously, about the incident. We are responding as quickly as possible, but that is a good indication of why we need to improve marine safety. That is what we're going to do. Stay tuned.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Human Rights Council has been an embarrassment to democratic members of the world body for years. Again this year, a number of notorious human rights abusers seeking membership are asking for Canada's secret vote. Now, it's clear the Liberals are working to curry favour for eventual Security Council votes, but isn't it time, Mr. Speaker, for the Foreign Affairs Minister to stand and to declare publicly how Canada will vote on Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and Cuba.
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I will need to repeat again that the premise of the question is wrong. We are not asking for favor for any vote. Never. It's not the way we work. The seat at the Security Council will be a tool for the goal we have in the world. We have a world that will be more secure, a world that will be more just, a world where you will have peaceful pacifism, a world where you have more equality between men and women. This is the world on which we are working, and the Security Council seat is a tool for that.
Calgary Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, Davut Hanshi has been imprisoned in Turkey for 3 months now without any access to legal counsel and denied virtually any opportunity to communicate with his wife and children. As a Canadian citizen, he deserves the support and assistance of this Canadian government, especially with numerous reports of human rights abuses occurring in Turkish prisons. Will the Minister of Foreign Affairs explain why he is focused on cozying up to dictators in China, Russia, and Iran instead of helping Canadians like Davut Hanshi?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Consular Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for raising this important case. Our government has been in contact with the Turkish government at the highest level, advocating for 2 citizens that are detained in Turkey. I have met with a parliamentary Turkish delegation when they were here in the summer. I have met with Mr. Hanji's wife just last week to assure her that our government is highly committed to the well-being of her husband and all citizens abroad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Well, it's unacceptable behaviour by a fellow NATO ally. Now, at the same time, Mr. Speaker, Canadians of Turkish origin are reporting unacceptable diplomatic behaviour by officials and agents of the Turkish government in Canada. In Canadian mosques and commercial establishments, Mr. Speaker, we're told adherents of the Gulen philosophical movement are being characterized as enemies of Turkey, and members of the broader community in Canada intimidated into avoiding, isolating, and informing on Gulenists. Is the Minister aware of such unacceptable diplomatic behaviour, and what is he doing about it?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it's certainly the case that our government is very strong to protect all the rights of Canadians in Canada, and any government that would try to infringe these rights would be wrong to do it, and we'll tell this government so. On this specific case, we have said to the government of Turkey, if they have no evidence, they should not create any problem with these people.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks the 37th anniversary of Small Business Week to recognize the hard work, talent, ambition and determination of Canada's small business owners and entrepreneurs. Small Business Week is also an opportunity for small business owners, entrepreneurs to participate in events across the country to learn, network and share ideas about making their businesses as innovative, export-ready and successful as possible. Can the Minister of Small Business and Tourism tell us how our government is helping small and medium-sized businesses in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Small Business and Tourism.
I would like to thank the Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre for that wonderful question.
Excellent.
Mr. Speaker, small businesses should be celebrated every day. They create jobs, they support local communities, they are the supply chain of larger companies in Canada and around the globe. This government, our government, recognizes the importance of small businesses, and that's why we are making investments in programs like Can Export, the Industrial Research Assistance Program to support innovation and skills development of all businesses, including young entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just minutes ago, the Transport Minister admitted that he did appoint Jim Spence to the Halifax Port Authority. It was Mr. Spence that the Minister of Finance took $1,500 from to meet at Mr. Spence's business partner's home. Mr. Speaker, what we want to know is what exactly the Minister of Finance said to Mr. Spence. Was anything discussed with relationships to developments in Halifax or at the port?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, let me say a few other things about Mr. Jim Spatz. Jim Spatz is the Jim Spatz is the 2015 recipient of Atlantic Canada's Top CEO of the Year, and he recently concluded a 5-year term as chair of the Board of Governors of Dalhousie University. As one of the region's leading real estate developers, Mr. Spatz brings a depth of experience and judgment to a board that manages 260 acres of land in the Halifax region. Achieving the highest and best use of port assets is crucial to maximizing the value of...
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. 1 year later, Liberal members are quite silent when it comes to Quebec's interests. Not a word for jobs in the forestry sector, which is on the verge of a serious trade war. Nothing for our dairy producers. They didn't lift a finger to help Bombardier, and they betrayed the workers at Avios. Radio silence for health transfers. Quebec deserves MPs whose voices are heard, not a gang that's asleep at the switch, Mr. Speaker. What happened? Did we lose the Liberal MPs from Quebec? There would appear to be a problem with translation. I didn't hear that. Members did not hear. Members did not hear the question. The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's clear that after 1 year, the Liberal government has broken its promises once again. We've got the same thing as the Conservative Party. We've got the same agenda as the previous government. Where are the Quebec members of Parliament from Quebec to defend our citizens, defend our jobs, to defend our economy in our regions? Where are they hiding, Mr. Speaker? Where are those Quebec Liberal members hiding? The Honourable Minister of Transport. My colleague is very passionate, but I am too. We're proud of the fact that 40 members in this House, including the Prime Minister and 6 ministers and the others who proudly represent their ridings, are here to look after Quebec's interests. We are very proud of that fact, Mr. Speaker. Order, please. The honourable member for Madawaska-Restigouche.
Speaker, from the marketplace to Canadian homes, drones are becoming more and more important and prevalent. Cela peut causer des risques à la...
And that can cause risk to safety that need to be addressed. In my riding of Madawaska-Restigouche, there are several airports, and in recent months, the Minister of Transport has made Canadians aware of potential risks between crashes with drones operating close to airports.
As to the steps he is taking on this matter.
Great question.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague, the member for Madawaska-Restigouche, for that excellent question.
To the safe and secure operation of this new technology as more and more drones are taking to the skies. Nous sommes complètement...
We are showing the necessary leadership with respect to regulations for the various classifications of drones, for marking systems, the registration of drones, and we will have comments to make in the near future, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, at the fentanyl conference in Alberta, authorities confirmed that they're not even close when it comes to confronting deadly fentanyl abuse. While opioid addiction isn't new, street drugs being laced with fentanyl has led to a public health crisis. Even though this government took some measures this summer, it's not enough, not even close. Will the Liberals take further measures to make it more difficult for illicit drug dealers to get their hands on fentanyl and increase the punishment for trafficking offences involving street drugs
laced with deadly drugs like fentanyl.
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for bringing up this very important topic. This was actually something that I discussed with my colleagues, the other ministers of health, yesterday. The opioid crisis is very serious. It requires a comprehensive response, and in fact, we've already begun with the Federal Action Plan. A number of provinces have taken great leadership roles in addressing this. I will be working along with my colleague, the Minister for Public Safety, to address the very matter of illicit fentanyl. We have already taken steps to list some of the precursors to fentanyl to not allow them to be able to continue to be imported into the country, and we will take all necessary steps to address the crisis.
Honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm aware that what I'm alleging is indeed shocking, but it appears the 3 federal government departments colluded with Petronas, the proponent, in order to suppress science and mislead ministers. The threat to the Skeena salmon is real, but the ministers were given a report that cooked the books. My question, Mr. Speaker, to the Prime Minister is, will he investigate the integrity of the advice given about the threat to Flora Bank and Lelu Island? Were these permits obtained by fraud?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister has emphasized, the only way to get resources to market is to do it in a sustainable and responsible way. The project that the member opposite is discussing was subject to a rigorous environmental assessment over a number of years. We delayed decision on the project to obtain more information from the proponent. The project is subject to 190 conditions. We have a first ever environmental monitoring committee that includes Indigenous peoples as well as the provincial and federal government. Very proud that we made this decision. This is a very significant decision, and it shows that we understand that the environment and economy go together.
This will conclude question period for today. I encourage members to take their conversations, which I know are important, into the lobbies. Order. I have the honour to inform the House that Mr. Rankin, member for the electoral district of Victoria, has been appointed member of the Board of Internal Economy in place of Mr. Julian, member for the electoral district of New Westminster Burnaby, for the purposes of and under the provisions of Section 50 of the Parliament of Canada Act. Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Monsieur Morneau, appuyé par
Mr. Morneau, seconded by Ms. Duncan, Etobicoke North, requests permission to table a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Pension Benefits Standards Act, 1985. This motion is deemed to have been adopted. Mr. Morneau, seconded by Mr. Duncan, Ms. Duncan, Etobicoke North, move that this do now be read a first time. This motion is deemed to have been adopted.
Quand ce projet de loi sera...
When shall this bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House.
Déclaration de ministre.
Statements by ministers.
Delegations. The Honourable Member for Vancouver Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 34.1, I have the honour to present to the House in both official languages the report of the Canadian Parliamentary Delegation respecting its participation at the 15th Winter Meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation's Parliamentary Assembly held in Vienna, Austria, on February the 25th and 26th. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 34.1, I have the honour of presenting to the House in both official languages the report of the Canadian NATO Parliamentary Association concerning its participation in the seminar of the Mediterranean and Middle East Special Group and the Subcommittee on Transatlantic Economic Relations, Florence, Italy, November 26th to 28th, 2015.
Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to present in both official languages the following report to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. The 17th report, entitled Via Rail Canada Inc., Special Examination Report of the Spring 2016 Reports of the Auditor General of Canada. Pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to this report. And again, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank our clerks and our analysts, our researchers, all those translators, all those that helped with this report. As every report, the professionalism is very much appreciated.
Honourable Member for Yukon.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, I have the honour of tabling in both official languages the 14th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The committee indicates that pursuant to Standing Order 91.12, the subcommittee will be meeting to study things on the priority list from Friday, September 30th, 2016. We have recommended that the following items do not be designated, or rather that they be studied by the House. Pursuant to Standing Order 91.12, the report is deemed to have been adopted.
Dépôt de projet de loi.
Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions.
Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you'll find consent for the following motion, that the order made Thursday, October 6, 2016, pursuant to Standing Order 97.1, respecting the deferral of the recorded division on the motion to concur in the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security, scheduled to take place on Wednesday, October 19, 2016, be discharged and the motion deemed adopted.
Does the Honourable Member have the unanimous consent of the House to propose the motion? Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Carried. Motion.
Motions.
Présentation de pétitions.
Presenting petitions.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising yet again on behalf of the hardworking residents of Shawnigan Lake in my riding of Couch and Malahat-Langford, who are fighting a contaminated soil dump in their area, affecting a critical watershed. They ask that the federal government take some action on this issue and enforce the Fisheries Act to protect this critical drinking water source and fish habitat. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to present a petition on behalf of nearly 9,000 Canadians regarding birthright citizenship. This petition asks the government to introduce legislation that requires at least one parent to have Canadian citizenship or resident status before granting their child citizenship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Drummond.
The honourable member for Drummond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour to submit some dozens of petitions because the people of Drummond are very concerned about the issue of tax havens, because these create problems when it comes to delivering public services like health care. We know right now that there is going to be a $36 billion hole. We want the government, people want the government to take the necessary measures to be able to reduce inequality through this measure. The honourable member for Saint-Étienne-Piagat. Mr. Speaker, I want to introduce another series of petitions regarding Bill C-245, a bill aimed at reducing poverty. Citizens are asking members here in the House, to vote in favor of the bill, which should be voted in second reading on October 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to present two petitions. The first is one that comes in our old-fashioned way, handwritten from residents throughout Saanich Gulf Islands, calling for the federal government to take action to prohibit the use and sale of bottled water within federal institutions, except in cases when potable water is not otherwise available. The second petition, Mr. Speaker, is one of grave injustice. It's a global scandal and a deep tragedy that on March 3rd, 2016, Honduran indigenous activist and leader Berta Cáceres was murdered, and the work she was doing was to protect indigenous communities and the environment. We would really, the petitioners, Mr. Speaker, want an investigation, want the Canadian government to help stand up to make up for the weak powers of investigation where this crime occurred. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to present two petitions. The first is on palliative care, and it highlights the fact that the House of Commons in the last Parliament unanimously supported a motion calling on the government to create a national strategy on palliative care. So they're calling on this Parliament to carry on that work and create a national strategy on palliative care to make sure that every Canadian has an opportunity to high-quality palliative care at the end of life. Second petition, Mr. Speaker, has to do with sex selection. It highlights that ultrasounds are used to identify the sex of the child, and if it's a girl, the pregnancy is ended. Over 200 million missing girls in the world right now, and it makes it very dangerous for girls around the world. And they're calling on Parliament to condemn discrimination against the girls occurring through sex selection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to present a petition signed by Canadians from my city of Saskatoon. The petitioners are concerned about the accessibility and the impact of violent and degrading sexual explicit material online and the impact on public health, especially the well-being of women and girls. As such, these petitioners call on the House of Commons to adopt motion M47. Thank you.
Presenting petition, présentation de pétition. Questions en inscrit.
Questions on the order paper. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that all questions be allowed to stand at this time.
Is it agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Notices of motions for the production of papers. The honourable member for Foothills.
On Monday, the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs said she was committed to transparency and was willing to provide audited financial statements at any time. And with that in mind, I would like to ask you to call a notice of motion for the production of papers of number P11. Thank you.
Notice of motion for the production of papers numbered P11 in the name of the Honourable Member for Foothills, the Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that this notice of motion for production of papers be transferred for debate.
For debate pursuant to Standing Order 97-1. Notices of motions for the production of papers. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I would ask that all notices of motions for the production of papers be allowed to stand at this time, too, please.
Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Orders of the day.
Government orders, government bills, commons, resuming debate at third reading stage of Bill C4, an act to amend the Canada Labour Code, the Parliamentary Employment Act and Staff Relation Act, the Public Service Labour Relations Act, and the Income Tax Act.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I'm privileged to reinforce the efforts of this government to ensure that Canada's labour laws best serve both employers and employees, and that they conduct their roles in growing Canada's economy. A fine balance is required in labour relations in the tripartite relationship between unions, employers, and government in establishing fair labour laws. First, let me address in protecting the rights of Canadian workers and in helping the middle class grow and prosper. Historically in Canada, unions have played a vital role both in determining the way people are paid and also in preserving people's rights in the workplace. To name a few of the many benefits secured, the right to fair, safe working conditions, compensation for injury, and equitable labour relations are three notable fruits of the work of Canadian unions that benefit all Canadian employees. The right to be treated fairly and without discrimination, according to the Canadian Labour Congress, is a most valued right that unions pursued for workers. Minimum wage, employment insurance, and maternity leave are also workplace benefits that many of us share that were pioneered in unions. Unions are and have been instrumental in developing the evolution of positive employment practices in Canada. The role this government is taking to assure that labour law is balanced, equitable, and fair accordingly, Bill C4 is set forth by this government to restore fairness and balance to Canada's labour system. It's essential to this restoration of balance and rights that Bill C-377 and C-525, that were both supported by our predecessors, be repealed now. Bill C-4 will fulfill that function, Mr. Speaker. It will rescind the provisions of two bills, one bill that causes undue interference and upsets balance and stability in labour relations, C-525, and one that attempts to amend the Income Tax Act for no foreseeable benefit and that only turns out to be counterproductive to a positive working relationship between employers and employees. Under Bill C-4, the system will be restored to a long-time system that worked well for decades. According to Bob Blakey of the Canada Building Trades Union, it will restore fairness in respect of confidentiality of union financial information and allowing unions to be treated like every other tax entity in Canada. The Government of Canada prizes the part that unions play in protecting the rights of Canadian workers, and in so doing, helping the middle class grow and prosper. They are a positive force in our economy. This government has not forgotten also that labour rights are human rights. Bill C-4 will restore and maintain those rights. Mr. Speaker, the repeal of these two bills is essential. The adoption of Bill C-4 will register both positive and productive outcomes, but in order to show these benefits clearly, it is necessary to outline the conditions of the bills and their counterproductive, unfair defaults. In Bill C-377, the intent was to require unions to make financial statements that show expenses over $5,000, salaries of more than $100,000. Unions were also supposed to provide statements related to expenditures on political and lobbying activities. All the information was to be posted on a Canada Revenue Agency's website, Keep in mind that legislation exists already, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that unions make financial information available to its members. Such legislation is evident in Section 110 of the Canadian Labour Code, with similar provisions in many provincial labour laws. In fact, some provinces feel encroached upon by this overriding of their responsibility. Redundancy is counterproductive. Labour unions are already transparent. An amendment to the Income Tax Act forms the basis of Bill C-377. This amendment requires a plethora of yearly financial statements that are prescribed in format and information. So detailed are the requirements that at least 24 different, highly specific statements must be included. This is an onerous annual task, which is set up by this bill, would be at the significant cost in dollars and time to unions as well as to the Canada Revenue Agency. It has been suggested that tens of millions of dollars will be expended for setup by government and compliance by unions for this redundant process. The compliance and preparation costs removes union funding that is supposed to be used by unions working for their members, and the setup and administration of funds removes funds for public spending by the government. These are all needless uses of union members' dues and taxpayers' dollars. Onerous, unnecessary tasks like this in Bill 377 simply set up excessive and expensive red tape. Intrusion and lack of privacy are results of both Bills C-525 and C-377. Bill C-4 will omit such problems by reverting to former processes. C-377 requires that labour organizations and associated organizations to report the details of every cumulative transaction over $5,000, accordingly invading the privacy of millions of union members, in addition to the privacy of any businesses that provide service to a labour organization. Not only are millions of workers subject to statements, but also Section 4 of Bill C-377 states the information shall be made available to the public by the minister, including publication on a departmental internet site in a searchable format. Thus, all Canadians can have access to this highly specific and often quite personal material, Mr. Speaker. Consider how this material could even interfere with effective collective bargaining when management is availed of information in these statements. In fact, the Canadian Bar Association has suggested that privacy concerns may make Bill 377 subject to legal challenges. Bill C-525 attempts to supersede the simple, efficient, and time-honored card check certification model for union certification by adding a separate mandatory vote system. Intrusion into union formation stands as the basis of C-525. Accordingly, adoption of Bill C-4 returns a workable labor management relationship with the union conducting its own affairs in its own way. It removes a precedent-setting position of intercession in labor organizations by management, as provisions in C-525 make it harder for unions to be certified, yet easier to be decertified. This disturbs the balance and stability in labor relations. It's important for workers to make free and informed decisions without intrusion, as was provided through the previous federal labor relations system, a system respected by both labor and employees. Such intrusion must be obviated in both Bill C-377 and Bill C-525 by adopting Bill C-4. Discrimination against our unions is widely evident and evidenced in Bill C-377. Other organizations, such as professional associations, received favorable treatment under taxation laws and are not subject to the intrusive, invasive, and expensive reporting mandated by Bill C-377. These other associations, sometimes federations, are freely formed in their own way, with no interference from management. Unlike the interference suggested in Bill C-525, the focus on unions in both bills is suspiciously inequitable. C4 will restore impartiality and fair, equal treatment. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the union movement in Canada was dealt a harsh, unreasonable set of blows by Bills 377 and C-525. In fact, they could be just the initial victims in these two possibly precedent-setting bills. The Government of Canada values the role of unions, Mr. Speaker, and values the role of unions in strengthening our economy and protecting the rights of Canadian workers. In this capacity, they help and encourage the middle class to flourish. The government respects the right of unions to be treated fairly and without discrimination. To restore a balanced, equitable approach to labour relations, it's essential to support Bill C-4. Canada's labour laws must be fair. At least 18,000 labour organizations, along with millions of union members, and indeed all employees in Canada, will be thankful for the restoration of workers' rights if assent is given to Bill C-4. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his speech. A simple question for him. We were elected 1 year ago today. We were elected by secret ballot. This bill is about, among other things, the issue of secret ballots. It is surprising to me that members across the way are opposed to guaranteeing a secret ballot. Of course, secret ballot is still a possibility, but it's not protected. I guess I want to ask the member how he would feel if all of a sudden he were to find that the next election for his position wasn't going to be a secret ballot anymore. Would he think that was a reasonable change to our national electoral system? And if he doesn't think that's reasonable for electing members of parliament, why does he think it should be not a guaranteed secret ballot in the case of unions?
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question. And Mr. Speaker, when we look at how changes should be made, it's usually when something is not working. But what we have found is that we had labour peace, Mr. Speaker, and labour peace is what we are all looking for. We are restoring a balance to labour and employer relations, Mr. Speaker, and allowing for those relationships to thrive. And Mr. Speaker, so when I look at the history of Canada and what has worked well is by having that balance in place. And the system that was in place prior to the previous regime looking to make those changes for I don't know what reasons, Mr. Speaker, it was working. So I say that we stand with a system that was working and we restore that labour balance to our labour relations. Thank you.
Questions and comments to the honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, having fought hard against the Conservative anti-union bills, we welcome the changes tabled by the government. So I want to thank the member for speaking on the importance of the rights of working people. We know that rights of working people have been under attack for far too long, and the repeal of the Conservative bills is a good first step. But there's so much more to do for workers' rights and conditions. And I have a question for the member. The Liberals committed to restoring good faith bargaining with our public sector service workers. When will the Liberals enhance the health and safety provision for our public sector workers, and will the member help champion this?
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for the question. And, you know, at the cornerstone of what organized labour does, it's really about the health and safety of our workers. We want to ensure that when our moms or dads or friends or family members go to work, that they come home at the end of the day and that they are safe. This is something that our government has championed, Mr. Speaker. It's something that organized labour and employees have championed, and we will continue to do so. We have one of the best health and safety records in the world. I say to the member, but we can always do better. It's something that we have to continue to be vigilant on and always look for ways to improve the health and safety of working conditions for all employees.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague from Mississauga East Cooksville for his contribution to today's debate. I just want him to maybe elaborate, based on his experience as the Ontario Minister of Labour, about the importance of having balanced relationships when it comes to unions and when it comes to employers. If he could elaborate on that a little bit, it would be much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague, and my honourable colleague, focuses on a point that is so crucial to our economy, and making sure that that those relations between employers, employees, that labour are in a place where we are able to be as productive as we possibly can. We have had labour peace in provinces, territories, and with our federal government for many years, Mr. Speaker. The system is working, and many from around the world have come. I know when I was a Labour Minister, we received many delegations from different parts of the world that came to study how we were doing it, because we were doing it right. I'm baffled by how the previous government looked to take something that was working well and to try and break it. So what we've done, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that we've restored that balance and fairness, and ensuring that those labour relations continue to be productive ones, and that our economy can grow under those, but as well as our workers' rights are taken care of. Thank you.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it saddens me that this is likely the last time I'm going to get to rise in this House and debate this piece of legislation, unless, of course, we have some type of miracle in the Senate that protects the rights of workers. I want to thank my previous colleague for his speech, but I find it the comments that he made to be paramount in their hypocrisy when it comes to what he's actually saying. He said, as the former Labour Minister for Ontario, that in Ontario we had it right. Well, guess what workers in Ontario get to do when they are asked if they want to be a part of a union or not? They get the right to a secret ballot vote. So, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't make any sense to me. He's talked about the rights of workers. These are workers' rights and human rights. So what about the right to vote? What about the right to know where your legislatively mandated union dues, which are tax deductible at the expense to about $500 million for the taxpayers of Canada, what about the rights of all of those people to know how that money is actually spent? Well, we know. We don't have to rely on the misinformation campaign by the member opposite. We can simply take a look at the polling information that's done time and time and time again, which has resulted in the very same laws, the regressive laws that the Liberal parties in support of the NDP are going back to, laws that have been changed in virtually every other democracy in the world that we would consider ourselves a peer to, and in the provinces of our very own country, of which the United States, for example, has mandatory secret ballot voting to decide whether or not you want to be in a union or not. Various other countries in Europe do the same thing. Various provinces in Canada do the exact same thing. I don't know any member of Parliament that's been able to stand in this House and say that a constituent came to them and said, please, once I elect you with my secret ballot vote, I'd like you to trundle off to Ottawa, rise in your place, and make some speech about things that are flowery but don't make any sense whatsoever, and demand in the House of Commons that you take away my ability to see where my tax dollars or my union dues are being spent, and please, for goodness sakes, take away my ability to have a secret ballot vote. I don't want to make that decision on my behalf. Tomfoolery, Mr. Speaker. This is absolutely ludicrous. If we take a look at what people actually think, and when they talk a great game about union bosses, they talk a great game about employers, but they never actually talk about what an actual worker wants. This is what poll after poll of unionized workers, people who actually pay the dues, not the people that live off of the dues, not the people necessarily who tax subsidize the union dues, but the actual people who show up with their lunch pail in their hands every day going to work and pay these union dues. So when Leger, as recent as 2013, asked the questions, the opinion on a secret ballot when a union is formed or removed from a workplace, across the country, 69% completely agree. 17% somewhat agree. We are talking numbers north of 75, 80% in the various regions of this country of unionized workers say absolutely they want the right to have a mandatory secret ballot vote to verify whether or not they want to be a member of a union. What is so wrong with supporting that notion? It is absolutely mind-boggling to me. This would be tantamount to a member of parliament saying, I want the right, when I'm door knocking in my constituency during a by-election or a federal election, general election campaign, to be able to take the ballot straight to the door of that voter. I can bring along two of the biggest people I know, and they can stand right behind me while I'm knocking on that door, and I can say to the person who answers, I think it might be in your best interest if you vote for me right here, right now. That's called card checking. And that's sometimes how it's played out. I've heard from my constituents, now the Liberals and the NDP like to claim that it was the government's notion, the previous Conservative government's notion, to put this bill forward. I did it. I did Bill C-525. I did it because I heard from the workers in my riding that they were not getting the accountability that they wanted. Now, I don't think, as a member of Parliament, that I should be reaching into the internal operations of a union, but I do believe, as a member of Parliament, I have a responsibility to give every accountability measure I can to the workers to understand where their money is being spent, so they have to be able to see where it's being spent, and the ability to hold that union to account if they're not doing a good job spending union